Good morning. How is everybody? So we're going to talk about terrariums, but not really terrariums because I did not get any ordered in. My bad. So sorry for that. Terrariums you can either do covered or uncovered. Really what terrarium means is that you're growing stuff in glass and it has a little eco environment of its own. I'm going to talk more about miniature gardening, things that you can use to do the miniature gardening. Really, your imagination is your only limits. So if you had a log at home that you just really loved, this log, it came from a special tree or something like that, you can actually hollow it out and use it as a miniature garden piece, which they turn out really, really cute. You can use teacups and saucers. You can use just about anything that you can imagine in your head, you can use as a planting vessel. The biggest thing to remember is a lot of them do not have holes in them, so they won't drain. So if they're not going to drain, you want to really watch your watering and make sure that you only put like plants together. So you would never put a fern in with a succulent, because ferns take a lot more water than what your succulents will, and your succulent is going to rot while your fern thrives, and vice versa. Or if you watered for the succulent, then your fern's going to turn brown and say, I don't want to live here anymore. I just kind of like this pattern for fall. All it is a soup bowl, but you can take that, you can put a cute little arrangement in it with little foliage, that kind of stuff. Use it on your Thanksgiving table, use it on your for your fall decorations. If you're having a Halloween party, you could do the same thing with the little plastic trick-or-treat buckets. You can use just about anything. I would say do not use a soil that has moisture control, because it's going to hold so much moisture in that everything's going to get root rot. When you start potting, like if I were going to use this dish to pot, I would start out with some kind of really pretty little rock that I like. That way you can see the color coming from the bottom. Then you can put your soil in for your plant. Once you put your soil in, you could actually move it away to where all you see is the pretty rocks in first, and then never see the soil, to where it's just rocks. Is that making sense? I mean, I would use like a coffee cup, pour all of my rocks in, then put the soil in after that, and then plant my plant. So you would never really see the soil. Other things, you can just put the rock at the bottom. That way the water has some way of getting away from your soil and you don't have root rot as easy. Then put your soil in, plant, and then put a pretty top coat on it to where you can see it come through. A lot of people are doing house plants now just because we are in this time. Houseplants kind of went by the wayside for a long time. In the 70s and 80s, they were very, very popular. The last probably 5 years, they've started growing in popularity again. Now in the last 6 months, since everybody has been confined to their home, they've started buying houseplants again and doing plants in their home environment. I can't say enough about having plants in your house because they do so much good. They clean our air. They give us a sense of calm. I don't know if everybody's like that, but being around plants makes me a lot calmer. When I haven't had my plant fixed, then I can turn into a terror. So I try to always have a plant fix around me. Most of our house plants are low light to no light. I mean, there's some house plants that you can plant in a room with no windows and they'll do fine. just with a little bit of lamp light. The ZZ plant is one. The ZZ plant is are also so easy that you can forget to water it for a month or two and it's not going to get mad at you. It just says, okay, I'll wait. But all of our little guys, we do have to remember they don't have as much root structure, so you'll have to water them a little more often. Succulents, I would say when you put a succulent garden together, make sure that you're watering it only when you can stick your finger in and it's dry an inch into the soil, which it makes it kind of hard if you've only got a 2-inch cup. But stick your finger in there, and if it's dry an inch down, then you can go ahead and water it. Your foliage plants, you will water a little more often because they do take a little bit more water. The best kind of plants to use, really, I would say anything works when you can get it small like this. This is just a little ficus, a type of ficus, like your ficus trees. Ficus is a very big class. This guy is going to work for you. I would not put him in an enclosed terrarium, but you can put him into just a regular miniature garden and he's going to do just fine. He does take a little bit more water. So, and that's the way with most of the foliage that we have here. This is just a little asparagus fern. I totally blanked out. Asparagus fern. So he takes a little bit more water. So you could actually put these two together. You want to look for something that you have lots of texture because it brings more interest into the pot. Any of your succulents can go together because they're going to have the same water requirement. Hoyas fall in that group. Hoyas. Oh, I forgot all the names of your succulents. But your succulents, you're going to put your succulents, Echeveria, thank you. You're going to put all of your different succulents in one. And there's so many different, that category of succulent is so huge. So anything that's fleshy and holds water in its leaves is going to be considered in the succulent family. And so you would put any of those in together. You can actually use, people use lemon ball sedum out in their landscape all the time. It makes a beautiful little pot for inside the house. As long as you've got a window that it can get some sunlight through, it'll grow in the house. A lot of our plants that we have outside will grow inside. So you could do your succulents, you can do your cactus inside. Cactus is going to take a very hot window, so a real sunny one. But you could do a little miniature cactus garden. Just keep your cactuses, your succulents, and your foliage separate because that's the biggest thing is water requirements. I don't want these now. I do love the foliage. Almost all of the foliage that I brought in for this class has sold out because they're just regular house plants that you see in the bigger guys. Like this is a, no. It's a heartleaf ivy. It's called alocasia. It's one of the alocasias, which is elephant ear. Falls in that category. So this is a very high water requirement. You could actually take him and just put him in no soil, just like some marbles in a pretty little glass and grow him in the water. You could do the same thing with a miniature if they've bought all of them, but the little bitty small peace lilies that everybody seems to have, spathiphyllum, you can grow those directly in water, no soil. You just take him, wash all the soil off of his root structure, put marbles or something in, put your water in, let him sit on top of those marbles, and just watch your water level on it. And he would grow great in there. Every once once in a while, probably once every 2-3 months, you might, oh, look what you did. Don't say that word. It's okay. Every once in a while do a liquid fertilizer and but it's very sparing because everything is in the small category. And fertilize it like that. Just mix your fertilizer up like you would for your big plants, but you're just using very little of it in the plant itself. I get tickled with all of it. I like taking the plants and doing a little garden and then hollowing and doing it just in the plastic drip trays that you can buy, and then hollowing out my pumpkin and setting it on top of the pumpkin for this time of year. That way when the pumpkin dies, I can pull it out of the pumpkin and set it in something else. You could do the same thing in like an old cake pan that you had, or an old, anything like that. You can put your little garden in and then put it in a pretty fixture and change out your fixtures every time you turn around. Or not every time, but every 3 months or so. So that works out really well. Anything else I can tell y'all? I mean, I'm sorry. I was really surprised because to actually look up the definition of terrarium, I really thought that it had to have a cover on it. And they were saying that you can have covered ones or uncovered ones. That the real definition was just that it was in a glass vessel. So, and I guess with the glass vessels, it's kind of cool to watch because you can actually see your root structure grow. When you have clear glass and your roots really get established in that, you'll see the roots throughout the glass. And then you can know for sure, oh, I'm overwatering that because my roots are turning brown. They're not white and pretty like they're supposed to be. So that's kind of neat. It rotted. It's probably because when you started it, it's really good to layer, like I was talking about, putting the rocks in the bottom. Some people use charcoal as a filtration system. So you'd use rocks, then you'd put your charcoal layer in, then your soil layer. It does, once you water it that first time, if it's a good sealing terrarium, you shouldn't have to water hardly ever. A lot of times, like if you tried to put an African violet in it, one of the little African violets, it is not going to work. They do not like getting water on their leaves. So anything that's fuzzy, like there's that purple velvet plant, which is one of the Jews, but it's got that fuzzy. It is not going to live in a terrarium because it's going to rot immediately. It does not want to get wet. The Vicks plant would be like that. We have Vicks plant, lamb's ear, any of that stuff that's fuzzy like that do not like sitting with water on their leaves, and it just gets them just like that. The other thing I can tell you is that is a lot of our houseplants, if you've ever noticed that tips of them will start turning brown, it's due to the chlorine and fluoride that they add into our water. So before you water, I would draw your water, let it sit 24 hours or so that the chlorine and that can dissipate from the water, and then water. And it will keep it on the cleaner side, or use bottled water. But if you have a lot of them, that'll get expensive. The bromelade family, that's what you have. Once the parent plant, the plant that puts your flower up, flowers, it uses all of its energy to make a pup. And so you'll see one come up on the side. That parent plant will never bloom again. And so when that new one comes up to the side and is, say this big, and that good active growth, you can cut the parent plant off. Now you still have your root structure from the very first plant, but then you cut that one off. The tops, the pretty leaves and the flowering and that happens usually hangs on for 6 weeks, and then they start looking kind of bad, and then they go ahead and die, like you said, and then just cut the part that fell over off, and it will put you up a new plant. They do not have to be watered that often. I would not water them in their leaves. I would water them from the soil. You can put a little bit of water in there, just a little bit, but I would water from the soil. Water it really heavy until it's draining out the bottom really good, and then you don't have to water it again for weeks, because they are something that wants to be on the drier side. Because the water, I mean, you have it in the house, and growing where they are supposed to grow, that water dissipates pretty quickly. And then when you have it inside your house and you're trying to water inside a root structure, and most of our houses do not pull as much moisture out of the air as we think they do, and so it sets it up that you can breed mosquitoes inside your house. You can set up rot inside that area. So I would water it from the bottom, because that's where it takes up the water, is from its root structure, and go from there. So dump the water out. So, and then do that. I think you'll see a difference in it pretty quickly. And anytime that you have a problem that it looks like something's not thriving the way you would like it to, come in and talk to us. We'll help you as much as we can. That's another thing. I mean, we have mosquito bits that you can put across the top of your houseplants. A lot of people, not really mosquitoes, but fungal gnats will get loose from the soil inside your house. And it deters the fungal gnats, it does mosquitoes, anything that you're going to have that's going to stay a little moister. You can put this, all organic. It's BT basically, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not going to try to say that word because I'll mess up. But if you just really want to try to keep water inside those leaves like that, then you can. Yeah, yeah. I think everybody has a different way of doing things. Like somebody told me that I could keep my orchids growing by putting ice cubes on top of the soil ever so many weeks and letting it water like that. And it kind of struck me as a little off. I mean, people, it works for other people, but our orchids come from trees and very tropical weather, and they don't know what ice is. And I feel like if you put ice on top of those air roots, that it's going to kind of freeze them. I might be wrong, but biggest help I've ever had with the orchids is being in the bathroom where it gets lots of steam, and it seemed to make them happy. So, you know, some things, while they look really, really fragile and like you have to over pamper them and that, they're usually the hardiest and do not want you doing a whole lot to them. Yeah, I mean, have fun with it. Really. That's the biggest thing, is having fun with it. And then after you get really good at keeping those little plants alive, you can expand it and make little fairy gardens and all that good stuff. Well, thank you for coming.